been scanning the surface of a Scottish lake for centuries in search of the Loch Ness monster. This weekend, there is a decidedly more ambitious effort underway to see if there's any truth to the legend.
In 2018, a research team from the University of Otago in New Zealand drew 250 vials of water out of Loch Ness, sequenced every fragment of DNA suspended inside them, and ran the results against the global genetic database. The method is called environmental DNA. Every living thing in that lake had been shedding skin cells, mucus, and waste into the water for years, and the team captured all of it. What came back when the sequencing finished was not a plesiosaur. It was not a hoax. It was not nothing. And what it actually was is somehow stranger than any of those answers.
I saw it in August 1937.
What was it like?
Like an elephant's back or an upturned boat.
The 250 samples that broke the 90-year loop. Professor Neil Gemmell led the team. The strategy was a complete inversion of every previous Loch Ness investigation. For 9 decades, hunters had been chasing the monster. Cameras, sonar arrays, underwater microphones, boats running formation, sweeps through 23 miles of dark water. None of it had ever produced a conclusive answer because none of it could see through the peat-stained black water that fills the lake. Gemmell did not chase anything. He sampled. Environmental DNA is simple in principle. Every organism alive in a body of water sheds genetic material constantly: skin cells, mucus, waste, reproductive fluids. Those fragments stay suspended in the water for days before they degrade. If you filter enough water and sequence what you catch, you get a roll call of every species shedding DNA in that lake during the sampling window. The method only matured around 2010. It did not exist for the first 8 decades of the monster hunting. The team pulled 250 samples, surface water, mid-depth, down near the bottom, in the deepest basins, every region of the lake, every depth the creature could hide in. The samples went back to New Zealand for sequencing. In September 2019, Gemmell announced the results at a press event held on the shore of the lake itself. News crews from across Europe and North America showed up. So did the cryptozoologists. So did the believers. Everyone was waiting for the same answer to the same question. Was there, or was there not, something unknown in Loch Ness? The answer arrived in 2 parts. Part 1, no plesiosaur DNA, no unknown reptile DNA, no unknown mammal DNA, no giant sturgeon DNA. No genetic fragment in those 250 samples failed to match a species already cataloged in the global database.
There's plenty of other lakes and lochs, water areas throughout the world that have monsters.
Every dramatic explanation advanced over the past 90 years. Surviving prehistoric reptile, escaped exotic predator, undiscovered aquatic vertebrate. Left no trace behind. Whatever lives in Loch Ness is already known to science. Part 2, the part that turned the press conference into something else, was one signal that came back in a concentration nobody on the team had predicted. European eel DNA anguilla at every depth, in every region of the lake. In abundance that suggested the species was not just present, but thriving. The team checked the eel signal against other freshwater bodies they had sampled. The Loch Ness reading was higher than anything in the comparison set. Eels were not just living in the lake, they were saturating it. That single result rewrote the entire conversation. 90 years of sonar expeditions, plesiosaur theories, and academic debate had all been aimed at the wrong target. A technique that did not exist before 2010 settled the question in 18 months of fieldwork. The truth was in the water the whole time. Nobody had thought to filter it. If this is the first time anyone has actually walked you through what the eDNA survey found, hit subscribe right now, because what comes next explains how a fish could fool the world for nearly a century. And the answer is messier than the result alone makes it sound. The lake that made it possible. To understand why a fish could become a monster, you have to understand the lake. Loch Ness is the second largest freshwater body in Scotland. 23 miles long, 755 feet at its deepest point. It holds more water than every lake in England and Wales combined. The Great Glen Fault runs along its bed, a 62-mile tectonic scar still seismically active to this day. The depth is what matters. Below roughly 100 meters, the lake enters permanent darkness. No sunlight ever reaches the bottom. The temperature stays locked between 5 and 6 degrees Celsius year-round, regardless of what the surface is doing. Cold, dark, and stable. The water itself is also dark. The lake's watershed drains across enormous peat deposits, and the dissolved organic compounds stain the water brown. Visibility at the surface drops to a few feet. At depth, it falls to 0. A diver in the lower basin sees nothing in any direction. A sonar beam refracts off thermal layers and bottom topography in ways that confuse interpretation. This is the physical reason the legend held for so long.
This lies in the Great Glen Fault Line, which tears all the way across Scotland, and it results.
A creature could exist in Loch Ness and never be observed. It could surface once a year, leave a wake, and vanish back into water no camera could penetrate. The lake hid whatever lived in it. And that same combination, cold, dark, deep, undisturbed, is exactly the kind of environment that produces unusually large, unusually long-lived organisms. Predators stay away. Food drifts down. Metabolism slows. Time stretches. Whatever was thriving in the eDNA data had been thriving there a long time. Where the legend actually started, the first written report dates to 565 AD. Saint Columba, an Irish missionary, wrote of a water beast in the River Ness, the short river connecting the lake to the Moray Firth. The account describes a creature that had killed a man. Columba commanded it to retreat, and it obeyed. The story is hagiography, but it is also the earliest written reference to something unusual in these waters. The association between Loch Ness and anomalous creatures predates the modern phenomenon by more than 1,300 years. Highland folklore is full of kelpies and water spirits, shape-shifting monsters that lured travelers to drown. The cultural framework for believing in something in the water was already there. What changed in 1933 was the audience. The 82 road along the lake's northern shore was completed that year. Before the road, the shoreline was hard to reach. The communities along it, small and isolated. After the road, anyone with a car could drive the full length of Loch Ness with a clear view of the water. On April 14, 1933, a couple named Aldi and John Mackay were driving along that new road when they saw an enormous animal rolling and plunging in the water. The disturbance lasted nearly a minute before whatever was making it submerged. They reported the sighting to Alex Campbell, a water bailiff and part-time journalist for the Inverness Courier. Campbell published the account on May 2, 1933. The article used the word monster. Within months, the story went international. Then came the photograph. On April 21, 1934, the Daily Mail printed an image of a long-necked creature breaking the surface of the lake.
There have been circumstances where animals we thought were extinct pop back up in the world.
The photographer of record was Robert Kenneth Wilson, a London gynecologist who refused to attach his name to it. The image became known as the surgeon's photograph. It defined the Loch Ness monster for the next 60 years. It was a hoax. In 1994, Christian Sperling confessed on his deathbed. The monster in the photograph was a toy submarine, modified with a sculpted head and neck made of plastic wood. The whole thing had been staged by Sperling's stepfather, a big game hunter named Marmaduke Wetherill. The Daily Mail had hired Wetherill in 1933 to find the monster. He had been publicly humiliated when the tracks he claimed to have discovered along the shoreline were identified as hippopotamus footprints, made with a dried hippo-foot umbrella stand. The surgeon's photograph was his revenge, a fake monster planted in the newspaper that had ridiculed him. It fooled the world for 6 decades. The 1994 confession should have ended the legend. It did not. By then, the phenomenon had absorbed thousands of independent sightings, multiple sonar contacts, and decades of serious investigation. Removing one fraud did not remove the phenomenon. Something else was still being seen out there. 70 years of hunting the wrong thing. Every major investigation between 1960 and 2003 was aimed at finding a large unknown vertebrate. None of them found one, but several of them found something they could not identify. And that ambiguity is exactly what kept the legend alive. Tim Dinsdale, an aeronautical engineer, filmed a hump-shaped object moving across the lake on April 23, 1960. The footage went to the Royal Air Force Joint Aerial Reconnaissance Intelligence Center, the same image analysts who interpreted Cold War surveillance photography. Their conclusion? The object was probably animate. Not definitively. Probably. That single word kept the search alive for another generation. And Dinsdale spent the rest of his life returning to the lake every year, convinced he had filmed something real. The Loch Ness Investigation Bureau ran continuous shore-based surveillance from 1962 to 1972. Volunteers logged hundreds of sighting reports over those 10 years. Disciplined observers, not tourists, recording surface disturbances they could not explain. None of those reports ever resolved into a captured specimen, a clear photograph, or a piece of physical evidence. They simply piled up.
It's the bay in front of me, and you couldn't tell what it was. You could only see a spray of water coming off of something, like a torpedo.
Robert Rines, an American patent attorney holding multiple sonar patents, ran a series of expeditions in the 1970s with underwater cameras built for dark water. In 1972, he produced what became known as the Flipper photograph, an enhanced underwater image that appeared to show a large diamond-shaped appendage attached to a massive body. Rines and his collaborators called it a plesiosaur flipper. Critics called it an artifact of the enhancement process. The unenhanced original was ambiguous. The argument never resolved. Rines went to his grave in 2009, still convinced something large was down there. Operation Deep Scan. In October 1987 was the most aggressive sonar survey ever attempted on the lake. Adrian Shine, the most important scientific figure in the modern Loch Ness investigation, coordinated 24 boats running in formation across the full length of the water. Their sonar beams overlapped from surface to bed. The fleet detected 3 unexplained contacts, large, deeper than any known fish should be, and moving. Shine refused to claim the contacts proved a monster. He also refused to claim they were nothing. They simply remained unexplained. In 2003, the BBC ran 600 sonar beams across the lake simultaneously and announced a negative result. No large unknown animal detected. The BBC called it the final word. But sonar misses what it does not strike. A single sweep through a complex acoustic environment cannot guarantee what is not there. Every one of these expeditions was looking for the wrong thing. They were hunting a discrete, large creature with a head and a neck and a body that would return a clean sonar profile. They were looking for the silhouette in the surgeon's photograph. They were not looking for a population of long, slender fish distributed across every depth of the lake, each one of them perfectly invisible to a sonar beam that does not strike it at the right angle. The hunters were not failing because the lake was empty. They were failing because they did not know what they were hunting. The eels. Nobody was hunting. The eel answer is not new. Researchers have proposed giant eels as the Loch Ness culprit for decades. What the eDNA survey provided for the first time was hard genetic confirmation that the eel population is real, abundant, and present at every depth a creature could hide in. European eels are native to Scottish waters. They migrate from the Sargasso Sea as juveniles, swim up rivers, and enter freshwater lakes where they spend years or decades before returning to the sea to spawn. Loch Ness, connected to the ocean via the River Ness, sits squarely in their range. A typical specimen reaches about a meter.
There's a phenomenon known as pareidolia, and that's basically a fancy term for the situation where
the largest documented adults reach 5 or 6 feet. The classic Nessie sighting describes something much larger than that. 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. That is the only unresolved variable. Can a European eel grow that big in Loch Ness? The conditions argue yes. The deep basins of the lake offer near-perfect refuge. No predators, dark water, abundant prey in the salmon and trout populations swimming through. Metabolism slows in the cold. Growth continues across years that would kill a fish living in warmer, shallower water. European eels are famously plastic in their development. In the wild, they typically return to the Sargasso Sea to spawn after a decade or two of freshwater life. But a small percentage of any eel population never makes that return journey. They stay. They keep growing. The longer they stay, the larger they get. Because eels do not have a fixed adult size the way most fish do. They keep accumulating length and mass for as long as they keep eating, and eels live a long time. A Swedish eel named Ale was placed in a well as a juvenile in the 1860s and lived there for over 150 years, dying in 2014. Ale never reached the sea. Ale never spawned. Ale just kept growing in the dark. If Loch Ness specimens approach anything like that lifespan, growing slowly, continuously, in a basin with effectively no upper limit on space, individual eels could reach sizes documented nowhere else in the species range. No giant eel has ever been captured from Loch Ness. No giant eel has ever been clearly filmed in it. The hypothesis remains formally unproven, but the eDNA gave it the only thing it was missing: hard evidence that the population is real and the abundance is anomalous.
Sonar keeps picking up contacts with things that are bigger than the fish, and people keep seeing things that are bigger than the fish.
Steve Feltham is the longest-running argument for the eel answer. In 1991, he gave up his job, sold his house, and moved to the shore of Loch Ness to conduct a continuous monster watch. He has lived there ever since. The Guinness World Record for the longest sustained monster hunt belongs to him. He has seen unexplained surface disturbances. He has seen objects moving through the water that should not have been there. He has not captured definitive proof, and after more than 30 years of daily observation, he has publicly endorsed the eel answer. Whatever people are seeing, he believes, is most likely a very large eel. The man who has spent the most consecutive days staring at the lake came to the same conclusion the genetic survey reached. What witnesses were actually seeing. The lake's geometry produces seiches, large internal waves driven by wind and temperature gradients acting on a long, narrow basin. Those waves propagate beneath the surface, generating upwellings and wakes that appear to move under their own power. A seiche, combined with a large eel surfacing at the wrong moment, in the wrong angle of light, on dark peat-stained water, produces exactly the visual signature witnesses have been describing for 90 years. A hump. A wake without a source. Something breaking the surface that disappears before the eye can fix on it. Pile a cultural framework on top of that. 1,000 years of Kelpie stories. A Daily Mail hoax that ran for 6 decades. A worldwide expectation of what a Loch Ness sighting is supposed to look like. And a fish becomes a monster every time it surfaces in front of the right observer. The people reporting these sightings were not lying. They were seeing something. They were just interpreting it through a framework that predated them by more than 1,000 years. The framework was wrong. The sightings were real. What the survey did not sample. The eDNA results closed one door. They did not close all of them. The survey captured what was shedding DNA on the specific days the samples were drawn in 2018. A rare animal, one that surfaced only occasionally, lived deep, and shed genetic material in quantities below the detection threshold, could theoretically slip through a 250 sample net. Gemmell himself acknowledged this. Environmental DNA is powerful, but it is not omniscient. It tells you what was there. It does not always tell you what might have been there the week before, or the year before, or in a deeper basin not directly sampled. The survey took a photograph of the lake's biology. It did not film it, and the eels are still down there, right now, sliding through the bottom of one of the deepest, darkest, most acoustically complex lakes in Europe, surfacing occasionally, being seen by drivers along the A82, by tourists on boat tours, by Steve Feltham from his caravan on the shore. People are still reporting the same disturbances Aldi McKay reported in April of 1933. The phenomenon never actually stopped. It was never going to stop. As long as eels live in that lake, and they do, by the hundreds of thousands, according to the DNA, somebody, somewhere, is going to see one surface at the wrong angle on dark water and have no idea what they just witnessed. The genetic survey gave us an answer that is probably correct, a real biological explanation that was hiding in the water for 90 years, while the world looked everywhere except at the fish. But the water is enormous. The lake holds more volume than every body of water in England and Wales combined. The sampling window was finite, a handful of weeks in 2018. And whatever is shedding DNA in Loch Ness on a given day in 2018 may not be everything that was alive in it across the past 1,500 years. The survey told us what is in the lake now. It did not tell us what used to be there. It did not tell us what could be there next year. The eels keep swimming. The lake keeps holding its dark water. And somewhere down in the lower basin, beneath 300 feet of black, peat-stained cold, something is still moving. And the only thing the science can say with certainty is that it almost certainly has a name we already know. Almost. So, here's the question. Is it eels? Full stop? Or did the survey miss something that was not shedding on the days the samples came up? Drop your pick in the comments, and stay close, because the next investigation we are opening goes into water deeper than this one.